Hello, Tim. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, Nirmal.
Welcome to Global Chat Radio.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure having you. And the pleasure is in a more sense that I wanted to know more about WAMA. I've been connected with WAMA for about 2 or 3 years now, but there's a lot to learn, a lot to know why WAMA and why Global Chat Radio. So it's a good opportunity for me to learn, and I think through me, many other people would have the same questions and would like to know more.
Certainly.
So let's get straight into it.
Okay. So you asked why WAMA.
Mm-hmm.
WAMA is the Western Australia Multicultural Association. WAMA was first envisaged back in 2010 when a group of people from various ethnic backgrounds got together and built a pavilion in the gardens in the city of Perth. And they collaborated and raised funds and did a number of things to enable that to happen. And when they had finished, they said, well, that was fun. What can we do going forward? So they decided to create WAMA in 2013. It had its initial committee, people from Italy, people from Greece, people from Vietnam, and people from Croatia. Over the years, it's grown and now has a membership incorporating ethnic groups from all parts of the world, from Africa, from South America, from Asia, as well as the European ones who were there at the beginning. The purpose of WAMA, its stated purpose, is to enable people from different multicultural ethnic backgrounds to come together and form a harmonious community in Western Australia. The challenge with that, of course, is that many ethnic groups, when they get away from their home countries, congregate with people from their same background. So what we end up with is a lot of silos. We have a Sikh silo, we have a Vietnamese silo, we have an Italian silo, we have a Brazilian silo, etc. And what we don't have is a community that is a mingling of Indians, Chinese, Africans, whatever. So WAMA's, one of its main aims is to try and get people to know the other people in their community, not just the people in their own ethnic silo, but the people around them, the people they meet on the street. So that's really where WAMA comes from.
So my question and what I've observed in different silos is that even people from the same ethnic background, say for Sikhs, and I'm an Indian, so Indians are not even a homogeneous group. We have got, within Sikhs, we have got like 15, 20 groups and organizations working for different things. Indians have the same. We have got Indian Society of WA and Federation of Indian Associations in WA and some other more. So if people from the same ethnic background can't come together for under one umbrella organization, why do you think people from different ethnic backgrounds who don't have much in common will get together to work together?
Okay, why do I think that? Why do I think they should? Is because, just take the street that I live in, for example. Within 7 houses, we have a Vietnamese family, we have an Israeli family, we have an Italian family, we have a Australian family, we have a Indian family, and a couple of others. And we all have to live together and communicate. And Anyway, yeah, so we all have to live together. We have to work with each other. We have to keep an eye on each other's houses if, we're away, someone's away and whatever. So if I don't understand how the Vietnamese lady across the road, what's acceptable in her culture, how can I communicate with her and say, Dung, I need you to do this for me? Or equally, how can she talk to the Italian lady across the road from her and say, Roberta, I want some help with this? So if we don't understand the psyche of these different people, then, and I get that everyone is an individual, but there are some things that are common across cultures. I mean, you get the sort of the thing where in the mainstream Chinese culture, the woman is very subservient. Her role is to look after the kids and the parents. So we need to understand when they say, well, look, I can't come and do that to help you today because my mother has, or my mother-in-law or whatever, has a problem that I need to help her with, because for their society that's the most important thing. So we just need to understand people. Equally, just because someone is from Israel, when they got to Australia they encountered various problems in terms of how does the medical system work, the education, etc. Just because the lady across the road came from Vietnam doesn't mean that her problems are any different. So we need to be able to share, because for all immigrants, whether they're refugees or migrants, there are some common problems that they have in becoming part of mainstream Australia.
And the other thing is that WAMA will bring together organizations from different backgrounds together to work together. How will that turn into individual people at the ground level working together, or first knowing each other?
Good question. Each of these organisations has a number of individual members, people from their community. And one of the things that WAMA wants to do, particularly going forward into 2023, is to have a number of community events where we're encouraging these organisations to, one, present about their cultural group to all of the WAMA membership that want to attend, obviously, and also to have events where they can all display some of their culture, whether it be music, whether it be food, whether it be dance, whether it be craft, or whatever, so that people from all the communities can come and have a look and try to get at least a bit of an understanding of what's important to these particular groups. So we're going to be encouraging these member organisations to invite their respective members to come to these larger community events.
But okay, so moving forward, when all these groups are actually working together, they still don't form a big chunk of the Australian population. The last census said that the migrant population is something around 20-25%, not more than that.
No, the last census said that 51% of people living in Australia were either born overseas or had one parent that was born overseas.
Exactly. So that's the way of saying statistics. My parent might have been there, but I am an Australian, so the second generation of migrants don't actually are very connected with the background, or don't relate to the background. So they are Australians, and the actual migrants, the first generation migrants, is very little, 20-25%. And my question is that there needs to be a connection between if the overall ethnic groups come together, even if they come together where is the connection to from that ethnic group to the wider Australian population?
I think it depends on the group, and you're right. Some ethnic groups, second generation Australians, don't really care that their dad came from Kenya or El Salvador or whatever. But a lot of them do. A lot of them like to know about their roots, and so yeah, they like to know about their roots. So I think, yeah, you're right. You're never going to get to everybody. But then, let's face it, forget the migrants and the second generations and whatever. You can talk to your next door neighbour who might equally be a white Australian, and you have nothing in common with them either.
So, in specific, I would like to know, how is WAMA talking to the wider Australian?
Yes.
That's okay.
It's a good question. And I guess one of the ways that we try to do this is making use of Global Chat Radio as a forum for getting people to talk about their cultures and spreading that into the broader community. This is not something we've done particularly well in the past, but it's something that we're looking for our revitalisation in 2023 to really get it moving. And other ways, obviously, are things like social media, which is a big tool for everything these days, and again something that WAMA hasn't done well historically, but again, as of the beginning of 2023, we have a new person getting involved in driving our social media, and so that will help as well. But it's just a slow word of mouth type process.
3% of Australian population is Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island population. How are you connecting with them?
Similarly to that we would connect with any other ethnic group.
So is any group part of WAMA as of now?
We don't have a member organisation that comes from a ATSI background, no.
Right. So this is just WAMA, but I've seen across even in WA that there are at least 5 more organizations having a similar goal and having a similar composition. One is Ethnic Communities Council, ECCWA. Another is Multicultural Services Centre. There's few more.
Yeah, there certainly are. And one of the problems that we see, and you alluded a little bit earlier on to the different Indian organisations that are in Perth. One of the problems in Perth is duplication, and there are a lot of organisations, and you mentioned 3 of them just now, in the multicultural space. In some areas they sort of overlap their services. In some cases they have total different games. I mean, EEC is very much a lobbying organisation. Its charter is not the integration, it's about lobbying. Multicultural services is much more about providing support to people from a culturally or linguistically diverse background. And again, their prime role isn't about integration. But if we were to all work together as a collaborative, each with our own focus, I think we would have a much better outcome. But at the moment, or up until now, that hasn't been feasible. We, I think with the new president at EEC, I think we might see some change in that regard. And as we see changes happening at WAMA, I think it may be easier to reach out to some of the other organisations.
The one thing which is needed for any organization to run is money.
Yes. Do you have your checkbook with you?
Checks are going out of circulation, so there's not much to do. But what I'm alluring to is that most of these other organizations, even if they are for lobbying or if they are for providing services, they have turned into providing services in aged care or child care or some other things which keeps getting them revenue in addition to or in replacement of grants from the government. What are your plans in financial part?
Okay, good question. Grants from the government are nice, but they're not the whole answer. We have already started negotiations with a couple of organisations about becoming mainstream sponsors of the organisation for the, depending on which organisation, 1, 2 or 5 years that we're talking to. That is probably, we don't want to become a multicultural services centre because our core business is not providing aged care, whatever. So we have just started putting together a strategic plan, I guess, for our financial continuity.
Right. So you said WAMA has been there since 2013, about 10 years now. Take us through the journey of what have been your some major successes in these last 10 years.
I haven't been involved with the organisation for very long, so I don't really want to speculate about what it may or may not have done well in the past. But the one thing that I can say is that in the last 2 years, when I have been an active participant in the organisation, is it hasn't done very much. And this is one of the reasons why we're looking at having a revitalisation in 2023. It's one of the reasons why we have got a number of new people who are nominating for the committee this coming year, because what we need is younger people, well, not necessarily younger people, but people with new ideas, because unfortunately what we've had is some good ideas that didn't go anywhere and continue to be good ideas that don't go anywhere. Probably the only thing that WAMA has done really well consistently is the Multicultural Youth Talent Show, which it holds every year, where young people, school-aged people from a number of organisations and a number of backgrounds present a afternoon of entertainment showcasing their particular cultural singing, dancing, music. And that's been going for 8 years, and it's something that has happened very well every year. But it's the only thing I could really say WAMA has done well over the last few years.
One of the big ways for any organization to reach out to its constituents is social media.
Yep.
How are you engaging on social media?
Well, as I said just now, we aren't doing it very well at all. And one of the things that the new committee will be moving forward with is a plan around social media, and we have someone who's offered to do our social media going forward, if do is quite the right word, but to populate it. So hopefully we will have a much more active social media presence next in 2023.
So now that you are going through a lot of planning and strategic planning for the next few years, what would you like to achieve in the next, say, 3 years, and what barriers do you think are there for WAMA going forward?
Good questions. We're putting together our strategic plan at the moment. So until the new committee have had the opportunity to look at that and to put in place their particular thoughts. It's probably not fair to commit them to something for the upcoming 3 years. In terms of barriers, we've already talked about finance, and money is a key barrier, because anything you want to do effectively does cost you money. We need to find a way of getting money. As I mentioned, we do have a few things in the pipeline, but the other thing that's a barrier is people, or lack of people, because you can't have the same half a dozen or 10 people doing everything. So we need a lot more volunteers who are prepared to give some time to help in some way. And whether that means coming along once a month and working at a sausage sizzle, whether it means coming into the radio station and conducting interviews and editing programs and getting them to air, whether it means helping in the office. There are so many ways that we need help. We have our monthly morning teas, where it would be good if someone wanted to just volunteer to come along and be the tea person who actually made the tea and dished it around to the people who are there. Or for our Harmony Week event or our Volunteer Day function, to come along and just help, whether it's in a sort of an advisory, to telling people where to go, telling people, what's on, telling them where to find the bathrooms, the sort of things that you go to an event and you need some information about. And even in the planning stages of perhaps going out and getting quotes for, catering or other things we may need, going out and organising people who want to perform if it's an event that needs performers. So we need volunteers and we need money.
Right. So you got a good plans, and where does GCR comes in relationship to WAMA, and what's the relationship, and where did it started? Where is it now? Okay. What's the way forward for GCR as well?
GCR started in 2015, so a couple of years after WAMA. Was started by one of the gentlemen who was a founder of WAMA, and up until 2 years ago ran from his home as very much a multicultural music station. Didn't do much else. When WAMA got its premises at Chewett College in 2020, he moved it down here, and WAMA took it on as a activity for WAMA going forward. 2021 it was very active and did a lot. 2022 not so much, because of lack of people to do the programs mainly. Going forward into 2023, there's two models that we're looking at. Can't say too much about it at the moment because it's still in discussion in front of the committee, but certainly in the one model, it's to take what we had working well in 2021 and continue it and make it stronger and better, and because it is a very good tool to promote WAMA's mission.
And how would you compare GCR sitting in comparison to different radio stations? There are lingual radio stations like 6EBA, which does programs in their own language. Mm-hmm. And then there are other which do similar kind of station, and who even charge and things like that.
Sure. Okay, well, let's talk about ethnic broadcasting, 6EBA. They tend to do programs, as you said, in people's own languages, and that's fine, but that then continues to promote the silos. Because if you're an Italian, you're not going to listen to a program in Vietnamese because you won't understand it. Which is why one of our mantras is we will only broadcast in English, because that is the common language in Australia, and we want people to mix together, as we talked about earlier on. So in terms of, at the moment we are purely a streaming radio station, so we don't have a presence on your radio dial. You can only access us through the web. And that's okay, but it has its limitations. One of the things that we have talked about doing towards the end of 2023 is to approach the government for a license to broadcast as a traditional radio station, if you like. The problem with that is it's an expensive process, and at the moment there's no way we could afford to do it. Yeah.
So do you allow different groups, your member groups, to come and create programs on GCR?
Yes.
Or is it that you control the presenters and the guests, or how does it work?
We would love our member organisations, or even non-member ethnic organisations, to do their own programs, provided it was done in English. Equally, if groups want to come along, as say the group from Nuedu, they come along, they have a couple of people from the association that comes and talks, but we provide the presenter to conduct that program for them. We have other groups that are keen to do it all themselves, and we're happy to train members of their organisation to do that.
Right. So GCR has been there since 2015, which makes it about 7 years. How has been the reception to GCR in the last 7 years, and where do you think it will go in the next few years?
It will go ahead in the next few years, because part of the revitalisation program does involve making much better use of GCR. GCR from 2015 to 2020 was, as I said before, fairly quiet. It played music from various multicultural backgrounds, and that's nice for people to listen to. 2021, we did a lot of interviews with people from different countries about their country, about the culture, the history, the attractions, the food, the music, whatever. This 2022, we haven't been as strong in that area.
Right. With your emphasis on having most or all of the programs only in English so that we can reach out to the maximum population, there is a emerging trend in many organizations, not to name anyone, that to have a secondary language of education in the schools, depending on what is the majority next to the English speaking population.
Sure.
There is a big push to have multiple translated documents, especially from the government. Most of the documents are provided in different languages. Most of the local government do provide their websites in at least 10-15 languages. Where does these two views sit together, that on one side it's all English so that we can reach out to the maximum population, and on the other side there's a push to have multiple languages working together or parallelly?
Correct. There are a number of people in Australia who were predominantly born overseas, who haven't really adapted to English as a language. They are very fluent in their Mandarin or their Hungarian or whatever it may be, but they haven't adopted English. Now they still have to interact with governments particularly, and for them to do that in an equitable manner, governments at whatever level have quite rightly said we need to produce some of our documentation in a language that people understand, and hence we have documents in Mandarin and Hindu and Arabic and all the other major languages that are spoken in Australia. Given that there's 256 of them or something, we don't have 256 versions, but certainly the major ones. This, I think, is really important because I don't think someone should be disadvantaged just because they came to Australia when they were 60 and haven't been able to learn English. They've just basically communicated in their house with their family in their native language, and the second generation may be speaking some English, but this primary group need to be able to communicate with, particularly with government, because I think we have trouble understanding a lot of government documents in English for people who English is their first language. So, for someone for whom English is not their first language, trying to read an English government document is a challenge. Schools, I think it's important that we teach languages other than Australia in schools. I think that Australia as a nation, whilst it's a dirty great big island and is quite insular, we do need to do business with other countries. We do go on holidays to other countries. Number of people have relatives in other countries. And it's good for Australians when they go to whatever country to at least have a basic understanding of the language that's spoken there. So I think teaching other languages in schools is good. You get organisations such as multilingual families as it is now, that encourage families to not lose sight of the languages of their heritage, and I think that's really good. But I think in Australia we tend to speak English. It's a bit like going back into the 60s, 70s, and probably even today. People living in England went to France, and people there wouldn't speak to you because you haven't made any effort to learn their language. Whereas if they went to London for a holiday, they were expected to communicate in English. So, having that second language taught at school does help. It shows that you've made an effort. I mean, I have smatterings of a number of languages, and when I go to those countries, or when I'm talking to friends who come from those countries, and I say a few words, they at least say, he's made an effort, now we'll talk to him in English. So I don't know if that answered your question, but it was
Right. So one thing that I want to know is that GCR and WAMA are working together, and WAMA is kind of a peak body of different constituent organizations. Is WAMA also working in partnership with other organizations and different peak bodies, or working in partnership with the governments or local governments? What's the supra organization structure above WAMA?
WAMA doesn't have any formal partnerships with any other organisations. It does work quite closely with certainly a number of local governments, particularly in the immediate area, such as Stirling, Swan and Bayswater, and Wanneroo and Joondalup. But these are informal arrangements, and they're collaborations where particular activities have an overlap. It would be nice to have a formal relationship with some other organisations, because as I said earlier, there's a number of organisations working in the ethnic space with different aims, with different goals, but where there could be a lot better collaboration than there is now. So that's definitely on the work plan for 2023, to try and build up those relationships and get some MOUs and things in place. But at the moment, no, there's not.
Before we work towards closing this chat, if someone wants to connect to WAMA or connect to GCR, how can they find WAMA, or where can they find GCR? How can they connect? How can they volunteer?
Both organisations have websites, and on the two websites there are contact information, phone numbers and email addresses, and both organisations would welcome people who want to be part of it.
Right, thank you, and my best wishes for your next 2 or 3 years of whatever you're planning, your strategic plans, and that they come together. And it's been a pleasure working with GCR and WAMA as well, and knowing a lot of people here.
One of the other things is that I've mentioned a couple of times that we've got our AGM coming up, and we have a number of people who have held their hand up to join the committee for 2023, but we're looking for more people who want to volunteer. So if you know anybody normal who might be interested, please get in touch with us.
Right, sure you will do, and I'll put it on my socials as well, so that it gets a wider notice, and then hope for the best. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Do like, subscribe, and share on whichever platform you have heard this. To know more about Perth Dialogues, please visit perthdialogues.au. From everyone in the studio, goodbye.